Welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure, where I've been getting into the idea of the Cold War gone hot for Team Yankee, but have also pre-ordered Battle Group Northag and Centag, fully anticipating that this rule set is going to be a bit more realistic with vehicles coming on gradually and the battle heating up than the car park crash that is going to be Team Yankee. And the craziest thing is you can watch contemporaneous documentaries about what the tactics of both sides were and have American frontline troops having chats with Polish and Soviet officers from the other side of the line, and then the American guy turning to the camera and saying, I overheard them questioning, because I speak Polish, I overheard them questioning why our sergeants have maps, because in their armies, only the generals get the maps. And doesn't that speak volumes? But anyway, all of that aside, today you will be joining me in what is, frankly, just a glorified what's on the table report, because I've been dabbling with sprucing up and painting some Warhammer the Old World stuff, but the last few weeks in the UK has been so horrendously hot, where the NHS said, look, don't go outdoors because we can't really cope with 28-degree heat. Because there's no air conditioning, so it feels worse. So I just stayed indoors at the weekends, other than domestic chores, and in the few hours I had, between bits and bobs, I just assembled one starter box set of American armour, and then over the last few months I've been gently swapping, by coincidence, from my pile of opportunity with others, including Joe McCulloch, strangely, that famed rules writer. And I ended up with a few more American bits and bobs. And I thought, you know what? It doesn't require too much squinting and brain waves to knock together stuff. And so that's what this is. So let's take it from the top. I reckon, in terms of formations, I reckon I can pull together some kind of M1 Abrams formation and a Bradley mech combat team formation, and it's always worth reading rules before you start assembling stuff, because I thought I'd have a bit of a go at these two Bradleys, and I thought, hey, I love fully armored rivety kind of stuff, but actually all that I did was assemble two scouts, when actually I really needed one leadership one, which I've done. Where is he? There he is, poking his little head out. Let's see if we can get him in focus. Can we get him in focus? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. So he's in focus, and he's an HQ requirement. And then I'm going to have 4 M2 Bradleys in one platoon and 3 in another platoon, unless I can pick up another Bradley, because I've got, let's see what I've got here. I've got one group of 4 and one group of 3. One thing I did learn from watching some of the many videos on YouTube from the 80s, where they've got like manual training videos for the Americans sitting on the Rhine, and they basically say the weapons of today are so destructive and so accurate that you basically just got to stay out of sight and keep moving fast, because if you pop your head up or your tank up over terrain, you are going to get blown up. And that's really, so when I've got one single game of Team Yankee that I actually played, it was like playing chess, really. You had to expect to just lose stuff and sacrifice stuff to get other people to kind of come out. But the upside, I think, the reason why when I punched into ChatGPT, which does all my thinking these days for me, what kind of balance of a list should you do? It basically said the general advice is to have a load of infantry in these Bradleys, because that will enable you to face down hordes of Soviet tanks, because all the infantry are pumped to the gunnels with what I guess I just showed you, these Dragon missiles, and these anti-tank piercing, I suppose, modern day Panzerfaust. Although 12 I don't think is great, because if you're looking at armor of like 20 or whatever it is, rolling a d6 isn't going to pierce most tanks with that, but certainly that Dragon missile must have a good crack. And I normally can't stick 15mm infantry, but if they're plastic and they're done to a reasonable standard, which these certainly are, I'm open to it. And so that's the guy with a giant Dragon, aka modern Panzerfaust. So you get a few of those to jump out of your Bradleys. Although, I mean, these guys seem to have like a Waffen SS level style painted camouflage approach, which I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to. But you never know. I might just spray them green and see what happens. Sorry, the light isn't really allowing much clarity. But they look good. I mean, how people play 6mm, isn't there this movement, the joy of 6mm? I can't think of anything less joyous than 6mm. You might as well get little beads and roll them around a table, in my professional opinion. Right, so then, I don't know how I would squeeze these in, but you can have a Humvee scout section. And again, some of the Humvees seem to be able to, I think you're limited on how many you can have of them, these TOWs, these tows, but they seem to be pretty heavily armor piercing. I mean, that must be nigh on automatic to have a dude driving around in basically a Jeep who can take out the enemy's top tanks. Gotta love the US of A. So there's some of them, I suppose you could squeeze them into a list. And so the American list seems to be counterintuitive, because someone like me just thinks, ooh, big tanks. But actually having a lot of infantry running around with these anti-tank weapons seems to be pretty aggressive. And I guess what's been happening in Ukraine, they keep talking about, you know, the end of the tank. But then all these big American generals come on and say, ooh, people have always predicted the end of the tank. And it always seems to find some kind of strategic life. That's the M3 Bradley, we spoke about that. Apaches, so you can squeeze in 2 Apaches, but it's not part of the formation. Oops. I mean, this was a... How is that right? The other way around. I mean, there were lots of pieces, but I can't complain. It wasn't unpleasant to assemble at all. It was much more fun to assemble than this Cobra kit. This Cobra kit reminded me of stuff I used to assemble in the late 80s. Those Airfix kits where, you know, the pieces just seemed slightly amorphous, and they kind of fitted, but not quite. You couldn't quite tell what they were. Maybe I'm being overly critical, but clearly the kit's got a lot better over time. I mean, you don't want these guys turning up and ruining your day. And propellers rotate and everything. And, you know, frankly, this is all about toys, isn't it? So, whee! Nothing wrong with that. And I mean, crikey, so I think I read again online, with these, you just position them very far away, look 64 inches away, so anywhere presumably on the table, and that anti-tank is just going to go boom and destroy pretty much anything. And they can move around anywhere. I love helicopters, but then again, the enemy always seems to have something that can just take them down, especially the Russians. These M109s. So the M109s, they're some kind of heavy artillery. I used to love going to the War Museum when I was a little boy in South Africa, and you'd see these humongous pieces of artillery, mobile artillery, because I think it was something they were good at, or probably bought. And they're these huge cannon that could sort of fire kilometers away. And again, I think in these rules, the thing about these amazing American tanks, or Soviet top quality tanks, is that the frontal armor is heavy duty, the side armor is mid, as young people say, but the top armor is like 2 or something and pretty non-existent. So if you can get an artillery battery to home in on them and actually hit, then I think it's curtains for the heavy duty expensive tanks that you've paid for. And I did have fun magnetizing all this. There's something fun about using magnets. But actually, as I got on, I started realizing, do you know what value really is in adding? You could just stick use the pins that they give you, the plastic pins. So I've got 3 of those. Let's push them to the side. Again, I'm not really sure what the difference is between M2 and M3s. So that's an M2. They've got the same armor. I think they're the same. I think it's just what's inside. They've got the same speed. I'm not very good at those kind of compare-contrast exercises that they give kids these days. I really can't tell what the difference is. That's the HQ. And it's just one Bradley, which I think I've shown you. There is something fun about having a fellow poke his head out. And in the beginning, when I did all my World War II Flames of War stuff, I kept shoving in people to look around. In keeping with what I used to do in Warhammer Fantasy, you know, whenever I had a big creature or a big tank or something like a steam tank, I'd always put loads of little people walking around to emphasize the scale of the beast in question here, the metal beast. But then I realized that signifies like an HQ model, and there's no point in confusing everyone by shoving people on all of them. I would love to shove on a bit of more interesting stowage, because there's a little bit of stowage, but it would really make these individual, albeit can I be bothered to paint these individually? At the moment it's more kind of computer gamey. Loads of decals presumably for the helos, and some limited for the tanks. I mean, when it comes to tank camouflage, I think I'll follow so then we come to the question of M1 Abrams or A1 Abrams, and I didn't look into this too carefully, and at the beginning I just, in my usual way, just rushed ahead to make up A1 Abrams, because I always thought, you know, if you've got a kit, you want to go for the highest spec. But then I realized that in this game, multiple single units rules, and so you actually don't want to have something that is too expensive points-wise. You want to maybe dumb it down if there's not a huge difference. And looking at it, there isn't a huge difference. I mean, there's a slight difference in points, but in terms of what they can do, the armor looks slightly better. But I think, again, you come to that point of, does it really matter if so many infantry are running around with these amazing armor-piercing anti-tank weapons? So although I prepared 3 of these M1A1 Abrams, I've got a lot more M1 Abrams. I mean, in terms of the weapon, the gun, let's see if there's any difference in the gun. Oh, there's quite a big difference in the gun. Anti-tank 23 and 20. I mean, that, I suppose you roll the dice and you need like a 2 or something to pierce most things, but that, I imagine, you blow up everything on a 1. And so what have I got? Let's see if I can bring them into focus. Let's push back that. So you saw there were 3 M1A1s, and then there are 7. Oh no, what is it? Let's have a look. We've got, how many M1 normal tanks? We've got 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So 8 sounds good, like 2 units, because I think it's maximum 4. But 1 needs to be the HQ person poking his little head out. I mean, these are so fragile. Unfortunately, I dropped some of the early ones that I prepared, and these little machine guns broke on a few of them. But so helpfully, there was an extra machine gun of each, obviously anticipating all of this, on the sprue. And so I just had a feeling that I should keep those, and so I put them back on. I don't know what to say about that though, because clearly they're going to get broken again. You've got to be so careful. And I did have fun putting the stowage in different arrangements, but it'd be better to have some bags But I'm sure that's something I could sort out in green stuff, even with my limited green stuffing skills. And maybe that's something I'll have the next time there's a heat wave, which will probably be like next week. Let's push those back. So this would be the M1 Abrams HQ. So you see, that's the thing. If I had that formation, so I'd have one M1 Abrams Troop HQ tick. I could have some of these scout sections, because I think I saw a video taking the mickey about how the Bradley armored fighting vehicle was like designed by committee, and so it was supposed to be a scout vehicle, then it was supposed to be a personnel carrier, then it was basically designed to be like a mini tank, and so basically it can do, it's like the jack of all trades, master of none, was the point of this video. So I've got one scout section, because they're, I suppose you just call them M3s, and then you need 1 to 3 of these tank platoons, and these tank platoons, so again, as discussed, I could go for 1 of 3 and 1 of 4. And I think you just call them IPM1s. I don't know if there's anything that you can actually see. Slightly better frontal armor. So I could do that. Then I don't have any of these 106 cavalry mortar platoons. I'm not sure what they are. I have a feeling that they are these. Well, with a different, with the mortar stuck on the top. I could do that. Obviously got an M109 field artillery battery. Don't have any Hueys to be dropped in. And I've got a Cobra and I've got Apache. So I must be able to pull together an M1 cavalry troop formation. So that's nice. Okay, so if we have an M2 Bradley Met Combat Team, we have the HQ, which is just one of those, which I have, and the infantry running around inside it, just one little M16 unit. Then you have, I could do 2 of those Bradley Met platoons. So I suppose, let's see how many points you need. I wouldn't go for more, I think see if I could get 2 formations. And then you have, that's what that M1 Abrams tank platoon would be for. Bit of heavy punch to add to that. And then I could have some scouts. Okay, so I'd have one bigger tank combat team and one slightly smaller Met combat team and some helicopters. So that would be my force. Then you've got a little bit of a scout M113 driving around somewhere here. Where is he? See, even he can hide. And I think he just helps you get the M109s to find what to blow up. The VADS were a bit of a mess up. I was so excited to see that I had 2 in the box I swapped, but then one piece just seems to have fallen off, or 2 pieces, that side piece and the that little radar piece of equipment. I suppose I could always just buy some. I think, having played this once, you do need some anti-aircraft. They look quite funky. A little dude with his super machine gun just firing crazily at helicopters. Albeit, I think all of these Bradleys are anti-helicopter. So maybe they don't really need them in the Americans. Goodbye VADS. And then, I suppose quite big for the day, these MLRS rocket launcher batteries. So I've got 2 of those. You can have either 3 or 2, and I've got 2. I didn't bother with magnets. I did have some, but I just thought to myself, how often will I use these? And I wasn't sure that it was deep enough to put the magnet in, because I found this with my World War II stuff. You need very, very thin magnets not to kind of clump on each other and create a mound, which is really annoying. I mean, these do look very much like something you should keep very far at the back. They have, like, I think they might even have nil armor. What does it say? Nil armor. I mean, that's the thing about Team Yankee. you can't imagine that there were ever that many tanks driving around at the same time in the same place, especially with all those training videos I mentioned having seen, whereby they're told to kind of keep in small groups and hide in the forests of central Germany.
From the Soviet horde, which I shall do next time. But for now, keep well, keep safe, and feel free to subscribe and leave a comment.